Thank you everyone for joining our cyber threat workshop here on June 3rd, our first edition of summer camp. Benjamin Powell is here with me and he's already ready for summer with the big brimmed hat and the camp t-shirt. I think you have a whistle today too.
I do. I have a little whistle.
Okay, great. So if anyone is drowning, we will blow the whistle and make sure that you get the assistance you need. Here in a sec, we're going to get started. We have several hundred people that are registered today to get into the workshop. This is, again, our first one of the summer camp kickoff series. We're going to talk a lot about vulnerabilities, phishing, and how to get ahead of certain attacks in that domain, as well as how to scale threat indicators using some Jupyter Notebook investigation tactics. And so it's meant to be educational today. So we're going to take you through some of the principles and practices of using cyber threat intelligence, but we're going to give it a minute or so here for a few folks that are logging in to join us, and then we're going to get started with the material, and we're glad you're here today. We had the question in there, Benjamin, too, about Jupyter. I'm noticing a lot more people using it lately.
Yeah, it's for threat investigators. It's really nice because you can write a query like a Python script, and the data is stored inside of the notebook with it. So it's really nice that when you save it and you give it to somebody, they don't just get your raw notebook; they get the notebook and the data. So that's why it's so nice.
Yeah, always positive there. And give it just a few more seconds here. Joining us today from the RiskIQ team is also Jeff Root, one of our solutions architects out of Toronto. And it's pronounced Toronto, not Toronto, if you're from there. And so glad you're here with us today, Jeff. And of course, your initials are very intriguing, and I'm sure people can see it on the panel here. But you want to just make an introduction and say hello to the folks?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, I am Groot, as you can see there. I am based out of Toronto. You're right on the pronunciation. I'm a solutions architect here at RiskIQ. I help our customers get the most out of the product and make sure that they've got an internal champion. Happy to support the threat hunting workshop today and answer some questions that y'all have along the way.
All right. Excellent. Well, it looks like we have several dozen folks that have logged in and gotten going. So real quickly with introductions, Benjamin, who are you?
Well, I'm Benjamin Powell, the Director of Technical Marketing here at RiskIQ. My background, I've ran teams in the state of California, International Airport, the Port District, in education, biotech, financial services, manufacturing, even software development, and then went over to startups. And this is the fourth startup that I'm at. One fun fact is I enjoy spearfishing. And it's not the type where I'm stealing credentials and your data. It's where I go in the ocean and catch fish. And in the background, you can see some of my spears. And this was a fish I caught around November of last year. So that's my background, and I will turn it over to Josh to talk about his background.
Josh Mayfield. I've been at RiskIQ here for about a year and a half, lead up our security products and go-to-market strategies. My background is a little less of a practitioner than Benjamin's, but we work together on the same team here. And mine's a little bit more of the academic side and studying threat actors and their behaviors and their profiles, and specialize in those aspects of attacker psychology, what's really going into campaigns and attacks, and the underlying motives of certain groups and their infrastructure, what it's intended to accomplish and how it's shared and distributed. A common thing that we do here at RiskIQ is we track adversary threat infrastructure. So we tell you where their loaded guns are. We take you into their nuclear missile silos and any number one of those metaphors and so forth. But we really want to get into the guts of their weaponry, see where it is in the wild, who it's affecting, how it's being shared across all of them. That allows you to look at threat intelligence with a new lens, and you can really go from one to many. When you start with the weaponry that anyone can access and anyone can fire, it gives you a leg up, and also a lot of elasticity in your attack surface defense, because as their systems and weaponry changes location and goes under the obfuscated areas and pops in, spins out, burns down, pops up again, you can already be shielded by fingerprinting the infrastructure itself. So that's my whole world and kind of what I live in every day. And we'll just get started here with a few housekeeping things. If you go to the next slide, Benjamin, we'll head into a few aspects of what we're going to cover today. So on the right there, you'll see Illuminate in that big square with all those various eye chart capabilities and data sets. Those are the things we're going to use today. So when we look at all of the elements of the threat, when we go into the phish, when we look at various vulnerabilities, and then from there go into some of the Jupyter notebooks, scaling the investigations and indicators, those are going to be the aspects of RiskIQ that we're going to use today, as well as, Benjamin, I know you probably want to share some of the other tooling and instruments we're going to use as well.
Yeah, so when we actually go through and we use the tools, we don't just stay within our products. We're going to show you things that are freely available out on the internet where you can expand your knowledge of the investigation. So if you want to see a screenshot of that site at that date and time, we'll use some tools for that. We might even use like virus total, URL scan.io, hybrid analysis to be able to get some additional indicators so then you can branch out and expand the investigations.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You just head to the next one there. So we have a few poll questions. We do this, and it's really not like a political survey or something like that, or someone stopping you in a shopping mall. Can you believe that we're going to go to shopping malls soon again? And there's going to be people with clipboards, and they're going to ask to take a survey. They're always there. Not like that, but we're just trying to get a gauge of the audience here. One of the things that happens when we do these workshops is a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds show up. A lot of interested parties in threat intelligence, and in particular, finding and eliminating it as best you can. So we have a few different questions using the mechanism of polls just to understand who's in the crowd today, and making sure that we're guiding things toward that end. And so first question here, on the deck, just to try to understand your experience, looking at how you've used threat intelligence before, just to, again, gauge the audience. What are you familiar with? What have you used before? And just trying to see years of experience around it. And it can be very little. It can be a lot or right in between. Oftentimes we find that these things tend to skew toward the less time, usually between 2 and 5 years in that sort of range. But we'll just give it a couple of seconds here for as many folks as possible to answer, and it just helps us guide some of the things here and answer.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why we're asking these questions is when we do these lessons, if I know who is in the audience, I will slant the information to make it more meaningful to that type of group.
And so I was looking at here, Benjamin, you're able to see the results.
Yeah, we have about 47% less than 2 years. 33% is 2 to 5 years. 9% are more than 5 years. And 12% have never really worked in threat intelligence.
Great. Good to understand the crowd here. It does seem to be a little bit more on the less than 5 years. We have never, and then the majority is then going to be less than 5. So good to know. There's some basic principles that we're going to cover today, like the title of the workshop is the ABCs of cyber threat intelligence, right? So we're going to go through some of the basic things that you can understand with internet data sets. And so that's helpful. Thank you for participating in that particular poll. We have a couple more, just try to understand the kinds of use cases that you derive from threat intelligence and how you're purposing it. So for those of you that do have some of that experience and you've leveraged threat intelligence before, just asking you in the next question here, in what types of use cases, because then we'll reference how you would use the material and the intelligence in those specific ways. Sometimes it's, this happens sometimes where it's all IR and vuln, right? And so everything we talk about is really in response to known something, known vulnerability, known threat. But then sometimes we get into sort of third-party questions. We have an audience there, so then it gets to a lot of unknown. Where's the threat in my third party's attack surface, in my partner, my digital supply chain? And so it just helps us understand, again, just how you're applying the intelligence. And we'll give it just a couple more seconds there. And you can choose multiples on this one because, again, threat intelligence applies in many places. And I'll just give it a couple more seconds. Time up, like the school marm. Time's up. And Benjamin.
Okay. So
IR.
most of them, 89% instant response, 68% are vuln management, 34% strategic planning, 41% third-party and risk management, and 20% counterattack and takedowns.
I think we can utilize some of this, especially today with phishing.
Yeah.
That's an IR use case right there. And then we're talking about the vulnerabilities and getting ahead of early stage vulnerabilities in the VRM space. That's going to be significant. So skewing toward those ends, more of a responsive and reactive use cases oftentimes with intelligence, reacting to a vuln, reacting to a particular threat. So again, thanks folks for helping us understand the group here. And then just real quickly want to understand when it comes to looking at that attack surface, just how often we're looking at it, because we're going to illustrate some things today. The promo code that you're all going to use is going to give you access to a genuine real world attack surface. It won't be yours unless you're already using Illuminate, and whether you're in a trial period or you're already a licensed Illuminate customer, you'll see your own attack surface. But for those of you that are here just for the workshop today, just for the labs, we're going to give you another attack surface to utilize for the exercises. But just understanding your familiarity with using attack surface intelligence, your digital footprint. And we'll give it a couple of seconds more here. Thanks again, folks. It just really helps us gear things toward what's going to be most meaningful to you. And we'll chat it there. As is typical, kind of regular and every now and again, but 27% of folks saying that they do it rarely. So across the board here, kind of the bell curve that this one follows, and what we'll do is again just engineer things towards those use cases that you're most familiar with.
So 46% it's regular, 27 it's every so often, and 13% it's rarely for them.
Yeah. And finally, I promise folks, just trying to get a gauge here real quick. One of the instruments we're going to use is Jupyter Notebook. And so wanting to make sure that folks here just may have some familiarity. If not, we might go into a little bit more detail about how to use it, how it works, how to leverage it for a lot of automation. And so, Benjamin, is there anything real quickly you want to say about Jupyter before we, again, illustrate it later, but anything here around the audience's familiarity with it?
Yeah, so like I was just recently exposed to it in the last 5 months. And once I started using it, I was like, why didn't I know about this earlier? It's pretty cool. It gives you the ability that when you run like an API query, so a lot of people will enhance the data in their own organizations, or when they do an investigation, there's certain things that they look for. And there's a way to scale it to make it that every time you run it, you get information back. So like if you're looking for a threat, you can actually run these queries on a regular basis, get the information, and even have somebody junior to you run those, have the information, and then take some action or run a workbook. So about 18% have used it before, 47% haven't. So, 18% and 82% have not used it before. So if you want to do one of these, like solely learning Jupyter Notebook and things, let me know. Jeff and Mark Kendrick are awesome at it, and I would love to get them to help do one of those. So if you, after today, if you see that you like it, in the comments or in the chat, let us know, and I will schedule one for summer school to go through and teach you how to use Jupyter Notebook and enhance your investigations.
And finally, last thing, we just want to make sure that we understand where everybody is in which attack surface to assign to. So that's one of the interesting things that we do is we map the whole attack surface and then we carve it up according to who you are, who the adversary is, who you, again, partners and digital relationships, and then show where those are entangled. But really try to draw discrete lines around whose attack surface and digital footprint is whose. And so one of the things that entails is which thing to assign to you for the purpose of the labs today and the workshop. And so if you have Illuminate, if you're trial Illuminate or in an Illuminate trial, and a lot of people when they sign up for workshops, they just click that and start the trial many times too. If that happens, you'll have access to your own attack surface. If you're not actively using Illuminate or have the trial spun up, then we're going to assign you the general attack surface that everyone will use for the exercises today.
And one of the things I want to mention is that if you already have an active trial, or you're an Illuminate customer, you're a paid customer for that, don't use the promo code today because it might make it that you don't see your current attack surface. There's a promo code thing that they're fixing. So we found that happened to a few people. So you don't have to activate the promo code if you're in an active trial. Otherwise, you might lose your attack surface until next week. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah, because the promo code will give you the general attack surface, and it can blow away your existing real one for you, your own personal attack surface. And so don't want that to happen. But the promo code, as Benjamin said, does give you that access to all of these labs and the material, the attack surface, the attack surface we're going to assign for the next week. And so with that, we're gonna get into these things here in a second. And thankfully, most of you don't show that you have an active Illuminate attack surface in that trial period. Excellent. There's a few of you that do. So we just want to make sure that we work around that. Don't use the promo code if you have a current trial going, because you can erase your current, personal attack surface. But you'll still be
if you
able
want to
use
kick off a trial, you can, and then your trial period's 30 days. You'll get 30 days of access to everything we're going to do.
That's true. After the promo, and we're going to show you how to sign up for the trial. You can then get a trial, and then it is your own attack surface, and you can do all the same things you learned today in another attack surface, but you can learn it through your own real personal attack surface. So again, not too many folks that are in that zone, but with 96%. Capable of using the promo
And
code.
Josh, we lost your camera, just to let you know.
Oh goodness, what happened there?
So I'm just letting you know. So what I'm going to do is while Josh fixes his camera, I'm going to start on the slides and go through so we can jump into some exercises. So if you kick off a trial, don't use the promo code. We should have everything fixed up by the next summer camp session that we do. But if you want to activate the promo code, that will give you access to one particular attack surface that we're going to be using today, and I'll give you a link so you can see it. And so just think of it, if it's not your attack surface, it's a third party. That could be a supplier, it could be a partner, it could be another organization that you want to see that type of data, and that's available in Illuminate. Okay, so if you haven't registered, you can go out and register at community.riskiq.com and /registration. If you use a free account, like a Gmail email or a Yahoo email, you will not ever see an attack surface because we don't know what organization you work for. If you use a corporate email address, then when you activate your trial, you will see the attack surface that belongs to your organization. So if you want to be able to see that type of stuff, you need to be using a corporate email address. The promo code that we created for today is CTW-Summer School-Camp. If you wanted to activate the promo code, you can go into your account settings. Under profile, you'll see promo code, and if you click on that little pencil, you can add it in. It's on the bottom of every single slide. So if you need it, you can use it, and it's going to work for 1 week. One thing I forgot to do is activate the promo code. So give me a quick second. Josh, give me a quick second. I'm just going to activate that promo code because I was doing so many things today, I forgot to do it. So give me 1 second.
Yeah, there you have it, folks. I mean, live and in the moment. It is on the bottom of every slide, as Benjamin mentioned. CTW for Cyber Threat Workshop Summer Camp, our first summer camp session here. We're gonna be doing this for the next 8 weeks, leading up to school going back, and the whole world is changing right now. I don't really know how to respond to it just yet, because I've been conditioned to expect certain things, and so it's interesting seeing people out and about in the world kind of getting back to normal right now. But here on virtual summer camp, we'll be doing that for the next few weeks, and so that will be the promo code you can use there, with it embedded on every slide.
So the promo code's active now. Sorry about that. I forgot to do the housekeeping before we started today. One of the things that we're going to be using, we're going to not only use RiskIQ Illuminate, but we're going to be using like Google Safe Browsing Checker, URL Scan IO, and hybrid analysis if data shows up, so we can actually get you more indicators and we can expand the investigation. Now, the disclaimer, what we're looking at is real live data. So that means real bad stuff. So when you see a domain name or an IP address, you don't want to go there directly from your machine. You want to use a buffer, a tool that will go and grab the data and allow you to visually see it. Think of it like a remote desktop. You might remote in and then have that machine do something. That's what the tool's doing for you. It's an air gap. It's a way of protecting you and your organization from attack. By using a tool that gathers the data, you're not tipping off that threat actor that you're investigating, for example, because the traffic's not coming from you. Also, if you're coming from your own place, the threat actor might have some filtering in place to prevent you from seeing the attack, because they know you're going to investigate it. So they might have filtering to say, if I see traffic from this IP ranges that this organization's using, that I'm attacking them, don't respond. So then you won't see it. But the tools that we're using are going to be coming from over 150 different countries around the world, grabbing data, bringing it in. So that's going to give you that visibility. Yeah. The things that we're going to talk about today, just last week, there was a huge vulnerability in WordPress, which is used by most of the websites in the world. And then we're going to go through the anatomy of a phishing attack. I actually loaded up a tool called GoPhish and created a phishing attack against myself to show you how easy it is. And this is in like real time. It's like less than 5 minutes. I can stand up and attack somebody. So I'm going to show you that. Then we're going to go back and review a previous exercise we did last year. And we're going to go look at that to see how you can understand how a phishing attack works, and some things you can look for. And then I'm going to tell you that you work for a particular organization, and then you have to proactively defend your organization against phishing attacks by starting from your own organization's infrastructure and finding people that are attacking you. Yeah. And then we're going to take one of those domains that we find in that attack, and then we're going to use the Jupyter Notebook to expand that investigation to find other organizations that are being attacked by a similar domain name.
That's right. That's right. And again, back to the disclaimer, all of this is live. That's kind of what we do. We gather things from the internet all the time, every day, kind of absorbing things. Is our live pieces of threat infrastructure, live threat indicators. So do proceed with caution. And as we all know, again, especially based on the poll results, security is hard, and digital security is even harder, because there's some legitimate challenges that we all have to face, and most of which are just circumstantial. It just kind of comes with the trade. For one, digital ate the world, and it didn't even ask us if that was okay. It just went and did it. And when that happens, we get a whole big gob of nearly infinite assets. They're not standard. They're atypical every time something happens, and they continue to flux and expand and really in a random way, almost like a weather pattern where the bulges and snaps and pushes happen in all manner of different directions. It's very difficult. The second thing is most threat intelligence is completely irrelevant to me. So finding what actually matters and pinpointing the threat that's relevant to myself, my digital footprint, my digital interests across the internet. That can be tough because most of the time I just have a partial view. I get some indicators, and there's some good stuff out there on malware and how it behaves once I'm attacked. But what's going on with the threat that's happening out there before it's come into my zone? Because I'm already entangled with it because I live in the digital space. I live on the internet. I live in the internet, and so does the adversary. So where am I actually entangled, and where are the threats that are related to my complexity and my context of the attack surface? That's the other challenge. Thirdly, and then of course I'm leading to the penultimate challenge, but the being able to then act on it, getting intelligence that A, is meaningful, B, is relevant, but then C, I can actually do something with it. That oftentimes is where the rub comes, and it can come from the fact that I don't have the capacity to infuse it into my legacy systems or processes or people. It can be because the key indicators that I'm looking at, even those that are relevant, there's nothing really to do about it because it's, that's in another third party's attack surface, or there's an actual takedown request I have over here, but I have to go through all the different chains of command to get that done. There's all manner of different things that can slow down the actionability of things, and having the hard evidence, the hard facts, the real world observations that you can act upon is what's difficult, because most threat intelligence, let's face it, it's speculation. It's some indicators of things and then speculation about how it would be used once you're already attacked. But really what you do pre-attack to shield yourself and have scaled defense, that final, holy grail at the end of the long race, is what's so difficult. I can't really scale my defenses. I'm still point and shoot at different parts of my infrastructure. I don't really have it layered very often because I just kind of get that surface layer, what I can see. But where attacks are happening in the fluid space of all that attack surface is where it becomes difficult. And it's not very elastic. It doesn't really grow and shrink with me and along with the threat actor and their infrastructure as it changes those entanglement points. And so defense is sometimes lost. And that's why it's hard. But when we think about the logic of it all, the internet is really just our other endpoint. So we have our attack surface. This is a ball. This ball is our attack surface. On one side, we have the typical things that we're used to with our systems and endpoints and our device-oriented ones, right? Something happens there. It comes up into an analysis sphere. We all know the typical players there, the EDR, the XDR types. Yes, I'm sorry, it's not an exhaustive list, just for illustrations. But then it pushes out to all those interested parties, those interested endpoints, to ensure that I have protection across the board. So it can happen once, but then I can scale to defend it against everywhere across my fleet. And that's really the device side of that attack surface. On the other side, that's where we come in, is something's happening on the internet, the other endpoint. But the same logic holds true. Being able to then surface that, look at it relative to my own attack surface, graph the relationships appropriately, and then scale out defense accordingly as I move through this cyberspace and those entanglements become more and more common. I start bumping up against things, but as it happens, I'm already shielded against it because I fingerprinted the adversary. I know where their infrastructure is. Wherever it pops up today, tomorrow, 2 years from now, I already have defenses against it. And that's sort of the digital side of that attack surface. So just real quickly here, and I know we've kind of been spewing a lot at everyone here, but this is sort of the logic of using external threat intelligence to go and attack the real problem, those challenges that we have in operationalizing our security intelligence. If you go to the next one there.
Yeah. So we're taking the inside and merging it with stuff on the outside. So you have a complete picture of your attack surface. Yeah.
And we do that by graphing relationships. It's real simple. It's hard, but it is simple. We gather everything and then relate it to one another. We've done that for a little over 11 years. So it gives us trillions and trillions of observations. So that allows us to create relationships that can have high fidelity. You can be confident that these relationships are what they are, that this entity is what it is, and this is the behavior it's exhibiting, the activity it's doing, and the alliances it's forming. Oftentimes, especially when it becomes these global scale attacks by SolarWinds Sunburst, that we all had to deal with last December and then through into the year. Then all of a sudden, exchange happens, and then second exchange, round 2 in April happens. All of these things have relationships and have identities. And so being able to discover who they are, what they are, and how they relate is exactly what's needed to scale that defense, especially in these terms of opportunistic attacks that go after an infrastructure point like a sunburst, like an exchange, because then it allows a lot of activity to come in, a lot of nefarious activity to breach me by way of hitting infrastructure I rely on. And so if we go into the next one there, that's really what the kinds of intelligence that we'll use that comes out of that graphing concept, the attack surface. Who am I? What do I look like on the internet? Understanding my digital footprint, the risks and exposures relevant to me. Scaling up things with security operations by infusing that intelligence into all manner of different aspects of my security stack, from my XDR, my EDR, SOAR, SIEM, and so forth. Being able to flip the script on a threat actor by understanding their infrastructure, their weapons in the wild, and being able to pinpoint them and track them through time, and understanding their own relationships and their attack surface. They've been peering at us for decades. They've been coming into our zone for decades. Why not flip it around? And then again, third parties, and who isn't concerned with third parties in a digital age? It's how our business operates with a fully digital supply chain. And for many businesses over the last year, it's become an existential thing. I have to rely on third parties. I have to have digitization everywhere. And so that invariably leads to a lot of dependencies and the threats facing them. And then finally, just getting ahead of the game when it comes to vulnerabilities and being able to discover them and exposures beyond just CVEs, but derivative vulnerabilities and exposures that are discovered by way of misconfigurations that align with a particular version, that aligns with a particular server aspect. All of those things are surfaced in Illuminate as an exposure, even if it's not a CVE specifically. But being able to understand all of that for ultimately faster mitigation. So those are the kinds of intelligence we're going to use today. And that's how we get there, through graphing relationships and being able to discover who's who and what's what, and signifying those relationships. And we're able to do that because we already graphed it all. So you don't have to. And with that, Benjamin, I think it's time to get into some exercises and really learn how to use it.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to do a vulnerability assessment. We're going to look at the WordPress vulnerability that was just announced. So when you think about the data that's coming in, we're gathering all this data at scale everywhere on the internet. And when we capture that data, it goes into our inventory, okay? So we're doing over 2 billion web requests a day. We're seeing tons of changes, new ports being added. We're looking at even the mobile app stores and things like that. So all that information comes in. That reconnaissance goes through our research team, threat intelligence. They work with the data scientists. They create these machine learning algorithms to find it. And every single day we update it. And we even have the capability to go back in time and bringing that data set or that new indicator forward back from the beginning of when we collected data. We create unique data sets that no one else has. And these unique data sets we're going to use today. And it allows us to do what we call infrastructure chaining. If you start with one piece of data, one indicator, you can come to us and we can tell you, well, that one indicator is related to this IP. That IP has this certificate. That certificate is on this domain, and that domain has a different IP and different certs. And we build these infrastructure chains out so you fully understand the full extent of the attack in the attacker infrastructure. So what we found out was when we talk to people in the community, we have over 100,000 users that use Passive Total. When we talked to them, we found out that a lot of them were using open source intelligence articles, taking the indicators inside there, typing them into Passive Total and finding additional indicators to fully understand the extent of an attack and leverage that to see if there's any commingling or entanglements between their external attack surface and that threat or that vulnerability. So what we did was we launched back last summer, the Threat Intel portal. And that's the home screen now where we have articles or you can search for things. You no longer have to have that indicator first to come to RiskIQ and search. It's like if you were doing a web search, if you didn't have the thing that you were searching for, those are pretty useless. It's just, you need something to type in. But now I can come here and read an article, understand what's happening, or I can, when I search an indicator, see if it hits on any articles that were out there, for example. But what we did was we also had our threat intel people and researchers look at some of these articles and add additional indicators. So that takes you further down the chain and jumpstarts the investigation for you. So we call those enterprise indicators. Now, those open source community ones, when we add those additional things on, give you the capability of fully understanding that threat or attack that was mentioned. Now, we also launched reputation score. So if I put in an IP address or I put in the domain, we will give you a dynamic score to tell you why we think this is neutral. We don't have any information. It's good, it's suspicious, or it's malicious. And this changes all the time. So for example, let's say there's a domain that was compromised and somebody was using it for phishing. It might temporarily be malicious because it has that phishing code on there attacking somebody. But once they clean it up, it's no longer malicious anymore. They might need to go patch and remove that code, and then they're fine. So this is a dynamic score that is calculated on the fly every single time you search. And when we go through and we use the UI, we'll be searching for some of these, but also we'll be using that capability in the Jupyter Notebook to say, take all these domains and tell me which ones are good and which ones are bad. And that's dynamic. So I can run that every day. And then when something is good, I can remove it from the list. And if I was blocking those things, I can allow access to it again. So this landscape helps us to understand the full extent of an attack or a vulnerability or the scope of this vulnerability in the world, and then how quickly it gets fixed. So for example, with the Microsoft vulnerability, we were able to say, here's all the places where that vulnerability exists, and then also show over time every single day how people patched and how fast it was happening. So we can see if you were using Illuminate, you can look to see, okay, I'm patched, but is my supplier that I'm working with or the bank I'm working with, do they have this vulnerability? And you're able to look at those things. So when you look at the attack surface, getting a hash value, IP address, or domain, those are kind of simple things now. Those are table stakes, commodities. When you start looking at the network artifacts or the tooling that's being used, or the TTPs that are associated with those toolings, those are the hard parts, and that's where we can really help you. So when we look at threat actors and our threat actor profiles, we're also mapping the gun that's being used. Think of it that way. It doesn't matter who's holding the gun at you or pointing at your organization. That tool is a weapon, and that weapon can be used against you at any time. So if you understand what weapons are out there and you have protections in place against these weapons that are out on the internet that are disappearing from one place and popping up on another, and you're putting those safeguards in place, then you're proactively protecting your organization from these threat actors because they can't use those tools against you. So no matter how their TTPs are changing or which organization they're trying to attack, is it an oil pipeline, or is it a meat packer, you will be able to understand where these problems are and protect your organizations. So we're going to go through and we're going to look at a vulnerability, and then we'll go look at some tooling. So the first one we're going to look at is the vulnerability, which was a WordPress vulnerability that exploited the PHP mailer that was installed by default with WordPress. Now, the one thing I want to stress with this is that people might look at this and go, hey, it wasn't no big deal, because in order for you to get to PHP mailer, you have to really get in from another vulnerability and then leverage this vulnerability. But it's a way to amplify the attack. You can do code injection, path traversal, or even a denial of service. So this is really bad. So even though you might not be able to, from the internet, hit this directly, so many websites in the world have this, it's really bad. So I'm going to go and put in some quick things into the chat that you can click on, and we can actually go through this. You're going to get a copy of all these slides when we're done. So everything that's here and every single URL I'm going to use will be part of that. So you'll be able to even show a friend or a colleague, and we're recording this, and this will be on YouTube in the next day or so. Okay, so I'm going to just grab
while you're doing it, while you're doing that, Benjamin, and placing it in the chat, one of the things, just returning to that, folks, one of the things we showed you was you have a profile for APT33, the Iranian-sponsored group. But then directly after that, you're looking at a threat profile, but not for an individual or a group, but for tooling. And that was Cobalt Strike that we showed you as an example. One of the ways that when we, again, zero in on that threat infrastructure is that ability to scale and to go from one to many. Because when you start at that infrastructure point, that loaded gun that anyone could come up and shoot, the other problem is that they're sharing it with one another. And so one of the things you can find when you zero in on that infrastructure threat is you can see all the threat actors that are taking part in that capability. And so sometimes we can overfit when we're zeroed in on a particular actor and their TTPs and their particular behavior. But when we start with the infrastructure, then it can unmask thousands of other threat actors that are just as capable, but may not grab headlines. It may not be as well known. It may not be on your radar as the top threats that you're trying to keep yourself from, but it is still a threat because it's entangled with your own infrastructure. So sorry, Benjamin, let's get on to WordPress.
No problem. So what I've done here was inside of the threat intel portal, the home screen, I typed in WordPress. And when I do that, it immediately will search to see, hey, are there any articles out here? And there was an article that was published on May 12th. Okay, so if I click on this article, it gives me all the information that I need in a single place. So these are all of the reference URLs that were in an article. So for example, if I click on this one, you can see that the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, published that, hey, there's this WordPress vulnerability and it affects versions 3.7 and 5.7.1. So what I was told was it was everything in between as well, but 3.7, 5.7.1. So if you're running those, you need to patch, you need to upgrade. If you don't upgrade, you can have, a DDoS, you can have a directory traversal where they can get into other places they shouldn't. It's really bad. So if you look at these, the WordPress piece, it actually goes through and says, hey, there's a new version 5.7.2, that's what you should be on. And even the CVEs are listed there. But if you notice back in this original article, all those links are here for you. So you don't have to jump around and do it. So we take all those articles, we make them available, and we have the public indicators that are in here. Now, I went through and inside of the chat messages, I gave access, I gave you the query to get there. Usually this would be a hyperlink, but for some reason they forgot to add the hyperlink part. So I gave them to you here. So if I search for WordPress, okay, I can go through and I can search to see where it belongs in the world. So if you look at these search options, instead of using this threat intel portal piece, I can change this to an advanced search, or I can come down to these components and I can search for WordPress. So if I click on WordPress, this is everywhere that WordPress has been seen in the world. The first time we saw it and the last time we saw it. And if you notice, we have 36 million entries. Okay, so 35 and some change. So when you round it up, it's 36 million. So if I right click and open one of those in another tab, you will now see that actual component listed here. And there's over 876 different components. So when I click on it, one of them in here will be WordPress. And you can see this is WordPress 5.6.4. Okay. So what I did was, in order for me to find that exact version number, the easiest thing to do is if you select one of these.
Benjamin?
Yes.
Just real quick, want to make sure we have someone on the chat that has said that the screen is not updating. Is anyone else having it? We're getting right into the indicators here. So I don't want that to be.
So my screen is frozen? Is that what they're saying?
They're just saying the screen is not updating. Just want to ask the group here. And again, it doesn't have to be all at once, but
I see a bunch of people say it's fine here, it's fine here, not for me.
Okay. Just didn't want the whole group to not be able to see the very indicators are going to. Go ahead. Sorry.
No problem. So what I did was, if you take a look at this version number that I clicked on, now I'm seeing everything that's version 5.6.4. So what I did was, this is a URL hack. Okay. I can come in here and I can change this to 3.7, for example. And when I search that now, I'm going to see just version 3.7. And if you notice, there's 13,000 ones that are associated with IP addresses. But if I click on the component search, it will now run that query, and we'll see how many domains or hosts are associated within this 23,000 domains that have that version in there. Okay, so it's pretty big. And if I came in here and I change this to version 5.7.1, we're going to see a lot more now. So now I have 512,000. And if I click on the domains, we see that there are 362,000. Okay. So if I select one, okay, I'm just going to select it just so you can see it.
And just to be sure here, Benjamin, what we're talking about here is a component that we're searching.
Correct.
And then by searching the component, we're seeing any domains that are associated with that component.
Anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world. So it could be me, it could be another, it could be someone I do business with, someone I never want to see in my environment, never want to be entangled with as well. But I just started with the component information. So I could go to CISA. CISA says these versions, quickly go, okay, well, let me look up those versions and see the scope of where it could be and of interest of my concern. Because again, when you map the internet and actually go through those layers and look at all of those components, you're able to create those relationships. And so you can do just that. You can start with a component search and don't necessarily have to start with the higher level infrastructure. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so when you think about how we're collecting our data, we're acting like a real user. We go to a website, we bring in the information, and we're looking at the perspective as a user. So anything that gets loaded, like you might pull an image from Facebook, you might be sending data out to Google Analytics. We have that full context of what's coming in and what's going out of everything on the internet. So when we have that data, we're also looking at the components, open ports, the banners, the services that are running. And we have all this data. And because we're the ones collecting it, it's not just a bunch of URLs and you have to go through and try to find if there's any relationship. We already have the relationship. So that's why it's easy for us to create that infrastructure chain and show you those pivots. So every time we're searching or clicking or right-clicking and opening another tab, we're showing you that next piece that's related to it. So this gives you the ability to quickly look at the scope of something that's out there. So if a vulnerability gets announced, we can immediately look to see if it's there. But you have to think of it this way. Now that I have this information, I can also look at an attack surface. And in that attack surface, it gives me the capability of understanding if I'm affected by it as well. So if you activate your trial, you will be able to see all of these types of articles and see if there's a hit with your stuff that you have on the internet. Or if you buy a third-party attack surface on a supplier that you're using, then you can even look at that. So instead of having to rely upon a quarterly report from your supplier that says, yes, we're doing everything well, please trust us, we're doing great, we're following all rules and regulations, and we're patching immediately.
Nothing to see here.
Right. So now you have the ability to look at yourself and look at others and know on a daily basis what's happening. So if you see a vulnerability with a supplier, you can look and say, hey, you need to patch this. And if they go, yeah, we patched it. You go, no, you didn't patch it. I can tell. I know when we saw it and the last time we saw it, and it's still there. So you might think you did, but you didn't. So you have that level of detail to be able to go through and understand how you look, how third parties look, and how the world looks. And as things get upgraded from this version 5.7.1, I can come through and say, show me everything on 5.7.2, the version I should be on. So when I look at this one now, I see that there's 479,000 people that did their due diligence and patched and upgraded. And there are, let's see how many domains, 337,000 that have updated their domains. Okay. And if I come in here and I look at one, I'm just going to click the first one just to see what's here. And we look at the components, I'll be able to tell when they did this. So if I look at 5.7.2 on May 13th, this organization patched. Okay, so this is the capability that you have to quickly answer questions and get accurate information that makes it timely for you to understand what's happening. Okay, so I want to jump in and let's get to the next part. So I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second and reshare because I forgot to make the little checkbox because I'm going to show a video that I recorded for time. Okay, so let me.
So in this video that we put together, it's really just to illustrate just how quickly and just how easily this is like real-time capability of standing up and executing a phishing attack. And so just to illustrate the ease with which some of these things can happen. And so go ahead, Benjamin. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
So the big thing is, the summary is, you now know how to check your own stuff and you can check others. But the big thing is to patch. Even though it's not a direct vulnerability, this can be amplified. Any minor vulnerability to get them into your server or into WordPress, then they execute this, and then it's really, really bad for everybody. So please make sure that you update. And all the URLs that I have, they're all listed here. So when you get this, you'll be able to show these types of things. So what we found out was there's about 53 million IP addresses in the world using WordPress and 91 million hosts. So those are like domains. For 3.7, there are 23,000 hosts. For 5.7.1, currently there's 362,000. And people that have patched, there's about 325,000 hosts and 464,000 IPs. But when you combine these together, there's 524,000 IP addresses and 385,000 hosts. All it takes is one other vulnerability to go in to execute this particular vulnerability, and game's over. So that's why it's critical for you to do that. Yep. So please patch your servers. So even though you might not be responsible for the web servers, you can find this vulnerability and now tell your organization we have it, or a third party does, and they need to address it. Okay. So what I want to do is show you a perspective from the attacker. We always see the plane crash. We don't see it when maybe a terrorist took over the plane and what happened. We only see the aftermath and looking at the black box and trying to figure out what's happening. So what I wanted to do was I found a tool that you can use in your own organizations to do a phishing exploit to see if anybody clicks on it in your organization. But threat actors do this too. And I want to show you how simple it was, because when I did it, I was so shocked how simple it was. I was like, uh-oh, this is what we're up against. And this is why time is of the essence. And you need to be proactive to be able to stop these things. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to run this quick little video, and I'm going to talk through it. And they recorded it, and it's not sped up at all. It's what would happen in real time. So give me a second. Let me know if you can see the video.
And folks, some folks have chimed in, as a message just for the panelists. So like people like Jeff, myself, and Benjamin. If you can ask me questions, absolutely, please do. So just chime in, whether that's in chat or do the raise hand thing in Zoom, and we'll be very quick to jump in and answer those questions as things unfold.
This is live. It's this live, and we want to make it interactive. So if you want to ask a question, please do.
Yeah. So please chime in with that. Very briefly, we're just going to take you through this short little clip that shows.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Powell. Hold on 1 second. There was some sound in this one. Okay, here we go. So if we take a look at this, this is from the perspective of a threat actor. So what happens is I downloaded this software called GoPhish. It's pen testers and people use this to be able to check to see if you're doing a good job in your organization and people aren't clicking on fish and stuff. So inside of here, what we're going to do is demonstrate like a spear phishing attack. Like they're going to target me. They're going to target my email address. Okay. So when we look at this, what the attacker does is they need to determine what's the ultimate goal of the attack. They want to get into some place. So in this particular case, they want to get into, they want to spearfish Benjamin Powell. And so what they do is they log into this GoFish, okay? And once they're logged into this GoFish, okay, they create an address of who they're going to target. Then they get a real legitimate email, for example. So there's no misspellings or anything. They can take a real email and they can then go back into GoFish and leverage that information. So here we go. I'm just going to speed this up a little bit. So they take a real email, okay? And from this real email, they view the source of the email. And once they have that email, they also want to know, like, what are they targeting? And for me, they're going to target my Fortinet account. They're going to get into my account so they can look at my firewall or do things to me. Okay, so they have the URL for that. So now that they have those two things, they create this email template. And this is how easy it is. Okay, and this is real speed. They put a name and you import the email. So when you import the email, it's as simple as going in and viewing the source on the email. Okay, and they copy that, and then they go in and they paste it into GoFish, and they hit import. Okay, and they change the little thing to say, hey, change the all of the links to be whatever we choose. So when we create the phishing site, any link that was in there will be rewritten to go to the links that we have. Okay, and then they save the template. Okay, and then they create the landing page, and the landing page is to duplicate the real website. Okay, so they grab that URL and they come in and they paste it in. So they import it in. And then there's a couple of checkboxes they do. So the first one they do is they say capture the data. So they capture the information that's typed. So that's like the account. And then they capture the password. But there's a warning here because real pen testers use this and that database is not encrypted. And then they can redirect you to the real site. So after you type in the credentials on the fake site, it takes you to the real site. So you don't even know that it happened. Okay. So this is what we're up against. Okay. So now you save this and then they run a campaign. Okay, so they're going to create a campaign now. Okay, so we're going to let that go. And now they launch the campaign. So we'll see that campaign launched. So what they do is they give it a name. Now for this case, I had it on my local IP, but I could have had it on a public IP and I could have had like a Let's Encrypt certificate on there. So it doesn't make any red flags, but I did this in my lab. Okay, and I did this a few years ago. So this is something that and it still works the same way, but I created this video a while ago. Okay, and then you create who you're going to send it to. So that's the profile of what email server you're going to use, and then the list of addresses. Okay, and then they launch the campaign, and this is how fast it works. And this is what we have to worry about every single day. So it will tell you when the email was created, when it was sent, if it was opened, if they clicked on the link, and if they typed in any data. Okay, so now we're going to kick this off. So once it goes to sending, the email was sent, you can see on the bottom, okay? And if we look, hey, it shows when it happened and the email was sent. So now I'm gonna go into my email. So when I go into my email and I click on this link, okay? So here it is. I click on the link, okay? Here we go. So if you notice up above, it's not, it's my own IP address. I put in my credential, I put in my password, okay? And I hit login now, and now look what happens. It's changed the URL to be the real one. I go, oh, it didn't take it when I hit click. Let me click again, and I click a second time, and then I'll be in, okay? So how many times have you ever clicked to log in someplace and you go, hey, it didn't work, let me click one more time? Could have been hacked at that point, could have been phished. So now inside the tool, I can see, hey, the email was opened, it was clicked on, hey, and the person submitted data. So it's as easy as the hacker to go up and say, replay the credentials. And when you replay the credentials, you hit OK, and boom, I'm in, and I'm Benjamin. Okay, and I can even view the credentials in there. Okay, but this is what you're up against. And this is why it's so important to understand how the phish works, how easy it is for anybody in the world. Like I showed this before, and I had a person put in the chat, oh, I want my daughter's account. I'm going to use this to phish my kids to get their credential. It's that simple for somebody to stand these up. And they're everywhere. So these tools are freely available for good and bad. So this is what you're up against. Josh, are there any questions that have come in from anybody?
Just another important reminder, and I put this in the chat, and so did Jeff. Be careful when using these kinds of things. When you use legitimate domains of interest and you play with these tools like this, eventually you can get flagged by Google. As seeing something that is associated and affiliated with phishing campaigns. We're one of those people that's telling Google the things we find so that are legitimate phishing and nefarious activity. We have that partnership with Google, letting them know things we find. So it is true. So proceed with caution when using some of these things, but primarily just to illustrate the ease with which tooling and instrumentation has become for threat actors. And so what I've noticed just in my own world and research is just the opportunistic nature of threat behavior over the last decade has really increased. We've gone from circa 2000, right, where esteem and notoriety within one's social clique within the hacker community was a primary driver. Through the early 2000s, it became a lot of that notoriety of oneself, but also how can I make some money at this? And we get a lot of exfil. Let me take something, steal it, and then go sell it and pawn it somewhere else. And then over the last couple of decades, or in the last definitely the last 5 years or so, probably the last decade, I'd say, we start to see the transition toward conquest, where I'm not just trying to break in and trespass to prove to my peer group that I can do it. And I'm not just going in and stealing and pawning it off to make some money. I'm directly engaging in conquest over your infrastructure. And so in the battle over the attack surface, that's what we're at now. I mean, that's what ransomware is. I mean, it's a conquest campaign. That's what a lot of everything from the type of spotting and the phishing campaigns that we're talking about. These are conquest campaigns to take more of the global attack surface than you do, to take more property, more territory. And that's when we talk about that entanglement and where they're snooping around and doing just that, launching conquest campaigns in the battle over the attack surface. And so anyway, just again, proceed with caution. These tools and this distribution and the ease with which they can now, anyone can opportunistically come in and launch a cyber attack. Just again, proceed with caution.
The level of expertise has come down way low into the food chain. So these attacks can happen from anywhere and from anyone. So that's why the tooling is so important. If you understand the tooling and where the tooling is stood up, then you can protect your organization, because it's no longer you have to just worry about the nation state. It could be anybody, person in a dorm room in a college.
Yeah. Or your 11-year-old who's really upset that you didn't give them pudding last night.
And this is okay. So it's really funny that you say that, because this one ties in great with the next one. Okay. So let's look at this one. We're going to play legit or not. Okay.
Okay.
So we're going to look at an attack against Netflix. Okay. I'd done this years ago, and when I did it, Netflix was actually in my audience, and we found more things than what Netflix knew about because of the way that we look at our data and how we have it linked together. So one of these is a phishing domain, and one of them is a real Netflix domain. Okay. And by looking at this, you can't really tell which one's which. So what we're going to do together I'm going to walk you through this together, and we'll have questions back and forth. And then from the knowledge that you're going to learn from this example, you're going to take on the ownership of a threat investigator working for a bank, a real bank, and you're going to find phishing attacks that have happened or currently are happening at that bank. Okay?
Which lack the apparent nature, just like this exercise does.
Correct.
Don't
And so
just
the
one-
skills that you learn, you're going to immediately apply them, and then you can look at your own stuff and immediately apply it to your own domains to find any attacks that have happened in the past or currently happening that you might not be aware of.
Yeah.
So you can be proactive. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste one of these into the chat, and then we're going to actually open it up together. We're going to walk through the interface, and we're going to walk through all of the potential data sets. Okay, so give me a quick second. I'm just going to copy this one. Okay, so I'm going to copy these two, but we're going to use the first one. Okay, so give me a quick second. Let me go to the chat. It moved. Chat. Okay, here we go. So we're going to open up this first one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just give me a second. Let me shut all these down just to make it nice and clean. Okay. assets.flxext.com. Okay, so let's go through the interface and let's determine if this one is good or this one's bad. So immediately, if we take a look here, I can see that this data bar, this is all the data that we've collected since RiskIQ has been around. We have data going back all the way to July 6, 2015, okay? Till now. So there's a lot of data. In this heat map represents the number of unique IP addresses we saw on that particular day. And this is 6 months worth of time that we're seeing in this window here. Now, as investigators, we are never told when things are happening right away. If that happens, it's very rare. We're always told like, hey, last Tuesday, there was an issue. So it does look, so somebody mentioned, hey, this looks like an airline seat selection map. It does. And what's nice about this, if I hover over, I can actually see those IP addresses. My information might appear a little bit different than yours because inside of my account settings, okay, under my data sources, I have some data sources that I've turned on. Alien Vault, emerging threats, and some of these require that you put in a credential. There might be a free credential. But what happens is when I search for something, it will actually go out to those other sources and bring that data in and bring it into the interface. So you'll see here I have Alien Vault and other ones that you might not see in your display, okay? Now, if we take a look at this, we also see this Analyst Insights up here. And if you're using the promo code or you're under an active trial, you'll see it. If you're a free account, you won't see it unless you have that promo code enabled. So the Analyst Insights are questions that analysts would have when they're looking at something. Hey, when was the last time it was changed? Is it on a block list? How many new subdomains? What has happened with different aspects? When was the last time RiskIQ talked to it? And this was just crawled a day ago, okay? The other thing is if I want to filter the data to look for a particular date or a particular range, it's as simple as going to the map, clicking on one square, and that's that one day, or holding the shift key down and selecting another. And now I have that entire range, and the data down below will now be filtered to show just that stuff. So you can go back in time and say, how did it look like on this date and time? And you can see it. Now, if I want to go back and I reset it, I can click to a different time period as well. And let me show you that real quick, just so you can see how it looks like. In the corner, you might see an orange sometimes, and that means something new happened. A new IP address was seen on that day, was added. So I can quickly look over the last 6 months and see when things were added or removed. And if I want to go back to the current time period, I can just refresh the browser or go to the far right and click, and now I'll see that date and time. Everybody with me so far? So that's the housekeeping. And you might notice over here that we have routable and non-routable, routable or non-routable IP addresses. And you're thinking, dude, you're talking about the internet. If it's a non-routable IP address, you're not going to see it. It's not there because it's not routable. And that's the whole aspect. When it hits the internet, it's dropped. Why would you see that? And the reason for that is that when we go in and we look at like the whois records, okay, there's a name server associated with that. So what does RiskIQ do? We go to that name server and we pull everything, all the records. And those records might be something where it says, this domain is associated with a loopback address of 127.0.0.1, or it's a public one. And so that's why you might see something that's non-routable and routable. But if we take a look at this whois record now, and we're trying to see, is this really Netflix or not? I can look right here and say, oh, look, it says it's Netflix. Mark Monitor, which is a paid company that does domain whois monitoring, and it's showing that, hey, it's in Los Gatos, and Netflix is in Los Gatos, and this is their address. So right there, that's one indicator to say, hey, it's probably Netflix, okay? And I can go back in time and I can look at all the other records, and all the other records have the same type of data, okay? So that's one indicator that tells me right now that this domain looks like it's really part of Netflix. Now let's look at the certificates. When we look at the certificates, we're gonna see some cool things. And the cool things are, we're gonna see where the certificate came from, any facets inside of there. So for example, if I expand out a certificate, I get to see all the alternative names that are associated with it. And you can see the wildcards, and you can see just the full domains that are listed. We also see the organization name. So GDPR broke whois, because now those relationships that we look at, this email address was associated with these other domains, or this name or telephone number was associated, got redacted. But inside of the certificates, you can usually pivot and find those relationships that you used to do in whois that are no longer available, okay? So bear that in mind when you're doing your investigations. So this certificate was associated with over 2,000 different IP addresses, okay? So we can see everywhere in the world it exists. So when we go to that IP address, we grab all the certificates associated with it, and then we look at all the domains, and that's how we're building this spider web of infrastructure chaining, okay? Now, if we look at the subdomains, there's 11 subdomains associated with this asset.netflix.com. And if we look, the naming convention of what we would expect from a streaming provider is right here in front of us. CDN, Content Delivery Network. Codecs, they're encoding those videos. So right here, this is another indicator that this is probably Netflix, okay? And in order for you to really make a good assessment if something's good or bad, it can't just be one thing. You need multiple points of proof to be able to make a good determination, okay? Now, if we look at the components, there's very little components here. But when we're done, we'll look at the real Netflix site and look at that one, okay? Now, the host pairs, go ahead.
You just gave it away. You said, we'll look at the real Netflix site. And see.
Well, we've been saying that this one is probably Netflix. We said about 3 things. We already said 3 things.
And the reason we're showing you this, folks, and going through all the tabs is you're about to do this. What we're going to do is we're going to put you in the seat of a bank, and you're going to be the threat investigator who's going to start with your own infrastructure and then try to identify these various levels of threats and and try to understand where those are being gained. Sorry, we'll tickle in the throat. So that's why we're marching through this, because these are the exact processes that you'll follow when we do the mock here in a moment, where you're the bank threat intelligence analyst, and you're going into to find where you're being attacked. So go ahead.
Yeah. So host pairs are like what's coming in and what's going out of every website. So if I'm on assets.netflix.com, hey, something's coming in and grabbing something from me. So like Netflix is coming in and taking something. The codex is coming in and taking something. So think of it this way. If your child had something, you can go and say, give that to me. And your parents might say, hey, I'm your dad, you give me that. And you're going to do it because it's that parent-child relationship. So the real Netflix site is reaching out to assets.nflxexe.com and doing getting a link reference. It's also grabbing images. It also did a CSS import from here. So all these are indicators saying that, hey, this is probably Netflix now. We have it's registered to them. They have a paid certificate. The host pairs are showing that the real Netflix site is reaching into it, okay? And then if we look at like hashes, this doesn't mean that there's a virus there or a problem. It might be that there was an email domain and it caught something that was there. Or somebody ran a query and said, go look at this site and tell me what you see. So that's like the hybrid analysis. I can put a domain in there and say, go crawl it. Tell me if there's anything good or bad. So those are all the things that you see there. So this is not a general indication that it's bad or it's good. It just means that there's some stuff here you might want to look at. And then if we look at the DNS servers, we can see like the canonical names, the MX records, the name servers, the A records, all those things. So this is what you'll see more things. And then the cookies that are being used. Okay, so we can see all the cookies that are out there. So now that we've seen this and we walk through it, let's do the contrast and look at the other domain. Okay, so give me a second. I'm just copying that and I'm going to open up another tab. And now let's walk through this other one. Did I grab the right one? Netflix subscription renewal. I'm going to give you one other one. Hold on one second. There was another one I wanted to look at. Okay, give me Netflix alert, this one. I'm going to put this one in the chat. I was deciding which one I was going to do, and this is a better one to look at. Okay. And as you can imagine, there are many people that are attacking Netflix. And I'm going to show you how to filter it to see it. But now let's look at this one. So from here now, a sharp contrast to what we saw before. This was only alive for 2 days. Okay, just 2 days. And now it's not alive at all. Okay, very short period of time. It was registered 5 days ago. So it was registered, something happened, and now it's offline. It's not there anymore because we're not seeing it anymore. There's no data. So that's a red flag right there. Okay, that's one red flag. It was only registered 5 days ago. That's another red flag because if you're going to do something bad, it happens within the first 2 weeks of that domain or first 30 days of that domain. So some organizations say, domain comes up, you can't get to it for 30 days because that gives the world enough time to like do the research, find out if it's good or bad. If anything went to virus total, hybrid analysis, RiskIQ, we can understand what's happening. So that happens a lot of time. So let's look down below and let's look at the resolutions. So if we look at those resolutions, okay, it's in Germany. So this is in Germany. Okay, well, maybe, maybe not, okay? But it's only alive for 1 day or 2 days actually. So let's look at the WHOIS records. So if we look at the WHOIS records, it's all redacted. There's no real reason why it has to be redacted if I'm a huge organization and I'm going to point it to my help desk number or my main number to my organization and give my address. There's no reason for it to be redacted, but it is. So that's a potential suspicious. Let's look at the certificate now. Okay. We look at this, we go, oh, a Let's Encrypt certificate, a free certificate authority. If I'm a threat actor, do I want to pay for infrastructure? No, not really. I want to blend in. I want to use free services. Does it mean it's bad on its own? No, but it's another suspicious. So it's only up for 2 days, registered 5 days ago. It has a free certificate authority. All of the WHOIS data has been redacted. All those are pointing to be something bad. Let's look at the subdomain. It's only one. Okay. If I was Netflix, you'd assume there would be more. Okay. Let's look at the components. With the components, one thing is the threat actor isn't going to load up anything it doesn't need. It's only going to load up exactly what it needs to do this job, this attack, because it costs money and it's resources and configurations and everything. So see here, 12 components. I'm going to open up another tab, and I'm going to do Netflix.com. And then I'm going to click on that little arrow and kick off the advanced search. So let's look at the components here
Just a
for
few.
Netflix. 1
Just-
million components, a sharp contrast. Okay. So 1 million components compared to 12. Okay. So that right there is like a red flag. Hey, there's only a few components here. Now let's look at the host pairs and let's look what's happening. So we have this alert, Netflixalert.com. Oh, it's reaching out to assets.nflxext.com, the one that we were first investigating.
Mhm.
So now we have plenty of information to say, hey, the other one's Netflix, and this one is bad. This one is not a good website. This is the phishing website. Okay, is everybody with me so far? So now I'm going to show you how you can look at the host pairs and filter it to quickly identify if there's any potential phish happening. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to go back to the previous one, the assets.netflix.com. And so what this one is, when I talk to the people at Netflix, this is like the backend system that has all the images, all the URLs, all that type of data that it's like the thing that everything links to. That's like the main hub of everything. So let's look at host pairs. So we're going to go to host pairs. So on the left-hand side, you see all the filtering, and you're probably looking, why do we have all that filtering? What's important about it? So once we do these filtering, you're going to go, oh, I understand why it's important. So if you look at this child host domain, we want it to be the domain that we're looking at, that people are coming into, okay? So I'm going to go to the child section, okay? And the child section, I'm going to click on that green checkbox for that, okay? So once I do that, now it's going to throw away anything where the anything that was showing up that maybe assets was going out to a different domain and giving data. So when it's reversed. So that means everything that's coming in is going there. Now, if we look at the causes on the left, okay, we're going to click off 2 or 3. And then once we see those, you're going to say, oh, I understand what's happening. So let's click off the checkbox for CSS import. That means somebody brought in the style sheets of the website, like the template. And we're going to bring in show more. I want to see if there's any scripts that are in here. There's a image, unknown source. Let's try this one as well. Okay. So now that I filtered those, I'm going to go start looking to see what's coming in. So as I've done this filtering, looking at my own domain or Netflix domain where things were linking into, I can start seeing these things that are coming across. codex.nflxext.com. Remember, that's like what the naming convention was on the other one. So this one is real because it's a subdomain. So it's the real one. Okay. Here's Netflix coming in. But now I see this secureverification.x24.com. So I'm going to open that up in another tab. I see this corporate one in here. So let me open that one up another tab. Update payment information on your Netflix account.tangdog.com. Let's open that one up another one. Okay. We have Netflix-signin.com. We'll open that one up another tab. And Netflix secure-authorize.com. Let's open that one up another tab. Okay. So we've done those really quick. And now let's go take a look. It's only been alive for 3 days. Okay. Let's look at the host pairs. Okay. We see that connection coming across and they're doing some JavaScript codes. Okay. Let's look at that whois data. Okay. No change or changeip.com. Okay. So this looks like it's GDPR masked. You see all these things. It's something that's not really great. So it's keeping that information there. There's no certificate yet. So we might not have seen it live with a certificate on there. there's over 2,000 subdomains that are here. So we can look through here and see if there's any other thing. There's not. If we go back to the who is resolutions, I'm going to right click and look at the IP address, because sometimes you might see an attack that has a whole bunch of different domains that are targeting the same organization. So I like to look at these. Pay, verify, team, security, password. So all of these, NFUC-authorized, so they're probably attacking them. So you can see there's a lot of stuff in there. I'll go back to the previous tab. So this is potentially phishing, okay? And I'll show you how we can check. So the next one that we looked at was this MALIKAIN corp.com. It's been around for a long time. Let's look at the WHOIS data. Let's see. It was blacklisted 10 days ago, blacklisted. Let's see. It looks like it's a real place. It's in Nepal. Okay. Let's look at the certificates in here. And let's expand these out. Okay, it's a paid certificate, cPanel. Let's go to the next one. Let's take a look. cPanel. cPanel. cPanel, and let's look here. Let's Encrypt. Huh. Okay. So there's a free Let's Encrypt. So that could be suspicious. So if somebody compromised, they could create a free Let's Encrypt certificate, maybe put it on there and do their phishing campaign. Could happen. Okay. We'll go back up and let's take a look at the host pairs. Let's take a quick look. Okay, there's that assets.netflix. So if I look at this domain, I can copy it. Okay, I'm going to copy that name. I'm going to open up another tab, a new tab to the right. Okay, and I'm going to do URL scan IO. So RiskIQ has the same data, but it's in our backend, and we don't make the images in Illuminate available to you. In our external threats, we have this data and we show it to you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on search, and I'm going to put that domain in here, and I'm going to see if anything shows up. And 6 days ago, there was something. So I'm going to click on this and see if I see what it looked like. Let's see. Oh, look, it's a Netflix login. Like, I'm not a robot. So this definitely was a phishing. So they might have got compromised and somebody put a phishing site on them. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Update payment information. Oh, it's a resolving blacklist. It was up online for 3 days. Okay, we'll look at the host pairs. Okay, and it's going against Netflix. And if we copied this and we went to URL scan IO and we said search to see what they had historically, let's see if anything showed up. There was one 2 days ago. Let's look at that one. And there's the login again. So another phishing attack. Okay. So all of these are phishing attacks. This has been blocked. It's resolved blacklist. This was up for just 1 day. So this is how you can go through and look at your own stuff. Any questions? We're going to now do one where you work for an organization.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we go. So we have about 30 minutes left, and I'm going to just start up my slides and show you. Okay. So you're going to do some proactive threat hunting now. And today, you all are working for Navy Federal Credit Union. Okay. And the reason why I picked this one is that when I was doing that previous one, I found a threat actor that was also targeting Navy Federal Credit Union. And so that's why I chose this one. So remember, don't go to these places directly because they are bad and you could potentially get malware put on your machine or something. And we don't want that to happen. So use the tools to be able to go out there and grab this data. So the domain that we're going to look at is mynavyfederal.org. Okay. So I'm just going to copy this, and it's a real site. Okay. So I'm just going to copy this domain. And I am going to put it in the messaging for everybody. Okay. There it goes. So if you go to RiskIQ and you are in this main search window, let's put this in. Okay. I'm also going to put, if you're using the promo code and you want to see this attack surface, okay, let me open this up as well, and I'll put the link in so you can get to it. So remember, all of the data that RiskIQ has is public data. Anybody in the world can see this information. If you know what you're doing and you have the tools and you have the expertise, you can go and gather this data. It's nothing that's private. It's not inside somebody's organization. These are things that are publicly seen on the internet, okay? So when we look at this Navy Federal, mynavyfederal.org, I'm gonna right click and open this up in another tab. And remember, where we're gonna focus right now is we're gonna look at the host pairs. And there's over 1,000 host pairs in here, okay? So now that this thing is showing up, I want you to go through and do that filtering like we had. So we're going to look where that mynavyfederal.org is the child piece, okay? So we're going to look in here and we're going to say the child host name is at mynavyfederal. So there's 900 of them, okay? And then what I would recommend is for the cause, we're going to look for CSS imports and scripts. So check those two things off. And then I want you in the chat, when you find something that you suspect is bad, let me know why you think it's bad, and then we'll look at it. So I'm going to give you a minute or two. And Josh, are there any questions that are coming in that I can while I let the audience work on their exercise?
Not right now. There were some things that folks asked, why is there a CrowdStrike tab? Why is there a Microsoft tab? Those are for those EDR integrations. If you have a CrowdStrike or a Microsoft integration that you want to utilize that inside-outside view, but that's really all it is now. Because we partner with them and we have a lot of full range access, it always comes up in our own access points, like Benjamin and I have, and so that's what those are there for. If you have a CrowdStrike integration, if you have a Microsoft integration, you'll see those tabs as well. But we can carry on with the Navy credit.
Yeah.
Navy
So think of it this way: if somebody internally in your organization visited this mynavyfederal.org, then I would have a hit. If I was running CrowdStrike and I had the agent on the machine and that person visited there, I would see it there. So I can immediately know, oh, I had a hit inside of my organization. Or if I'm running the Microsoft tools that are monitoring my organization, I would be able to see those hits as well. So it's the same way. So it's the inside stuff that's happening married with the outside stuff that you're investigating and seeing it in real time. So we do a query to Microsoft and CrowdStrike to bring that data in and show up on the tabs and see which individuals might have done it. But nobody in our organization has gone to this. So then that's why the data is showing up as 0. Okay, somebody says, oh, they found a couple. So let's start taking a look. Let's see if there's anything. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to change the amount that I'm seeing to 500. Okay, and now that I'm seeing 500, I'm going to start that filtering process. Okay, and say look for scripts and look for that CSS import. Okay, and let's look to see if we see anything that looks like it's probably not correct. So I'm looking at all these and I'm going, wow, these are pretty bad. So we can look here when it was first seen and last seen. Okay, so if we go through here, DG, Navy, Federal Credit Union, online security chapter. Let's look at this one because I don't know. Okay, so let's see if this one. Only up for 2 days. It was blocklisted 6 days ago. Let's look at the host pairs. Okay, so it's looking at Navy Federal. Let's look at the certificates. Is it Let's Encrypt? Let's see. Oh, it's a cPanel, paid certificate. Okay, let's look at the who is. Is it redacted? Pretty much, yep. Those are all redacted, okay. Let's look at, if I take this and I copy it, and I went to URL scan.io, and I did a search, and I said, hey, did anybody submit this to be crawled from them? Oh, yep. Let's take a look at it 12 days ago. Oh, look at this Navy Federal Credit Union login. Okay. So you have in your power to be proactive in your threat hunting to find things. Okay. It's completely doable. Everything that we're doing, you can look at your own and see if anybody's doing this. You can look at an organization you might be buying from to say, is this the real site? Is it a fake site? Like, I've trained my wife that she'll get like the PayPal thing. Hey, there was this big PayPal thing that happened on your account. Is this authorized? Click here. That she's now smart enough to like know, oh, don't just click on it. Let me go look at it. Or she sends it to me actually and says, honey, tell me if this is okay or not. And then I'll look at it real quick and say, it's fake, don't go in. But the biggest thing is if you ever get an email saying, hey, something happened on your account, click here, don't. Go log in the normal way you do and look at your history, look at your alerts inside of the application and make sure it's okay. Yeah. That's the best way to handle these things. I want to bring up one real quick that I had found. So I opened up, I saved a whole bunch of different URLs based upon this because I wanted you to see what I had found, okay? So if we look in here, this is now all spinning, so give it a second. And we'll walk through them real fast. I have to give it about 15 seconds and they'll all load. So I did this just like a day ago. There was this Gonzalez.net. And if we look at the host pairs, I think this is the one that was also attacking Netflix. Let's see. One of them was. Let's see if this was it.
A lot of tabs open there, Benjamin.
I do have a lot. I'm going to refresh it one more time. Okay. Analytics.navyfederal.org as well. They're hitting that one. And here's that assets.netflix. So this is how I came up with this one. So when I was doing the previous one, I go, oh, look, this group is also attacking Navy Federal Credit Union. Okay. So that's how I picked this one. Okay. So this is something that you can do on your own to find things. Now, when I went through, I found one that was pretty cool. Okay. So one of the domains that I found, where is it? NavyFederal.org. This one, where is it? One of the cool ones was a domain name that I went, oh, that's really good. Oh, here we go. Unlockaccount.dynamic-dns.net. And I went, that's a really cool name. You can throw anything in front of it. I can put Microsoft, I can put Netflix, I can put whatever I want as a subdomain in front of that and find some really cool things. But if I look at this and I look at the subdomain, there's over 2,000 of them that are here. And it's kind of hard to find them. So this is where I said, hey, if I can proactively go out and grab them all that are not just this dynamicnet.dns, but the subdomain from unlockaccount.dynamicdns.net, that would be really cool. And I might be able to find something that's neat. So what I did was I used a Jupyter notebook to go through and find it, okay? So what I did was I went through and said, in this Jupyter notebook, I want to look for this unlockaccount.dynamicdns.net, okay? And I want to go back 90 days and run this. So if I come in here and I go run all, you'll start to see all this stuff pop in. So immediately I got all these domain names, okay? And you saw how fast they came back. So I get all these things that are in here, and I went Command F, and let's look for Microsoft. Oh, look, Microsoft Books.unlock account. Let's look at another one. Microsoft NS.unlock. FTP Microsoft, Microsoft Help. www.Microsoft Help. Let's look for Amazon. Look, accounts-Amazon-Japan limit. Here's another one, SPA. So I saw all these cool things in here. And the next thing is, are these all bad? So in my query, I had it go out and figure out the reputation score for all these, okay? So I'm gonna just minimize this real quick. And if you notice here, you see them all scrolling across because it's going through, and for each one of those domains, it's finding out, is it malicious, is it suspicious? And if you notice, they're all suspicious and a few are really malicious, and we saw that some bad activity. So I went through and I pulled down those domain names. I said, well, how many were here? So when I copied and pasted them in, there's actually over 2,400 of these domains that are registered to this dynamic DNS. So with the dynamic DNS, basically they have the domain and they allow you to create subdomains, and then you can change the IP address of where it goes to. So for example, a lot of people use these like when they would VPN to their house, they had some sort of service that they wanted to have access to, they would go to one of these providers. But what we find out is that a lot of nation states, like Russian, Chinese, Iranian hackers, love these types of domains. And they create these things all the time because they can throw something on there, point it to an IP address, take it down, abandon the IP, and just move around. So I wanted to take a look to see, since I saw one on a dynamic DNS, what other threat actors would be attacked in here. So what I want to do is I want to find one for like the Microsoft. Let me go to the next one. Let's find one that look at. Let's see. FTP Microsoft Online Update. There was another online update one. Let's see. Help. Microsoft Online Update. So let's look at this one. So I'm going to paste this one in. But remember, please, don't go there directly. I'm going to defang this and just copy it. And when you paste it into RiskIQ Illuminate, it will automatically take out the defang. It will make it fanged again. So here we go. Let's take a look. Okay, so let's look at if it's suspicious or not. So the domain registered with this one are more likely malicious, it says. So because it's this dynamic DNS, and we've seen so many bad things from this domain, dynamic-dns.net, we're saying, hey, it's suspicious. You should be wary of it, okay? If we take a look at it online, we can see, hey, it's only been up for 3 days, okay? There are some host pairs associated with it. changeip.com. So somehow it's working with this one where they're probably flipping that IP address all the time. There's 2 components, because why put things on that you don't need to? And we have those 2. But now let's take a look and let's start looking at different areas. So let me bring up virus total. Okay, so let's look at virus total. If I search in here, and I said there's no match, but let's look on that first one that we did. So let me bring up www1 here. So if we search for this one, we look at this one. The reason why I like this one is we can see, hey, it's involved in phishing, it's malicious. We get some details. So we can actually look at the certificate. There's some who is information. So this is kind of similar stuff that RiskIQ has, but they found some relationships. And that code or the things that they saw on this website was siblings were all these other websites, okay? And if you notice, there's quite a few in here. And you can look at the IP addresses that they're in the 168.86.13. So there's very similar ranges of IP addresses that you find, but there's a lot of bad stuff in here, okay? So this is where I could take an indicator, expand it out, get some more, look at other sources to get other things that I might want to look at these investigations. So here's one, Chase Bank. So that was also related to Chase Bank. So then I can go through and see if there's any overlap or anything in my industry or a supplier or somebody I was looking at. So it's a way to gather more indicators to help you in your investigations. Are there any questions, Josh, that are coming in?
Not specifically about this particular exercise, just folks commenting on usage and utilizing some of the pieces, but nothing burning right now that we need to pause for or anything. I know we're soon to conclude everything, folks, and want to take you through some of the final little tidbits here and open things up for question and answer, and also show you how from here leaving today, how you'll access things and how you'll be able to get into the material in real life and actually put this into practice this afternoon.
Yeah. And one of the things I wanted to walk through, Josh, I didn't, was an attack surface and to show what you could see and how that data that you now have the lens. So we always talked about that we have the map of the world and we have the data that links everything around the world. But then now I can take that map of the world and say, this is your piece of the map. And now that I have that piece of the map, I can filter information to say, show me things that are relevant to me. You know what I have and what I'm running. So are there any vulnerabilities in what I have? You know what attacks that are happening. If you know that there's an attack happening, is it from my infrastructure? Is it from those things? So think of it this way: this is like when you come in the morning, you have your cup of coffee, you go, if there's something high severity, that means that I need to stop what I'm doing and I need to fix this, okay, right away, because we can have a breach, we can have a problem. If it's in the medium severity, it might be something that's not part of your group or your area of control, but you can tell somebody, hey, there's an expired domain. And if we have an expired domain, no one's going to be getting to it, or it's going to be expiring soon. Think of it that way. Or it might be a vulnerability that's not directly accessible, but it's pretty bad. And if we don't work with that group to fix it, we might have a problem. And then the low severity things are things that are more of a hygiene, things you should be planning on doing, okay? So if we come in and we look at like the high severity, we can see, hey, there's an Oracle WebLogic problem. If I read about this, I can see what's happening. But if I right click and open on this, we can now see in that attack surface, I have 6 IP addresses that are running that version of WebLogic that's vulnerable. So these need to be fixed. Mm-hmm. I can hit these, okay? If I go back and I come and look at the medium severity, you can see, hey, there's a Cisco ASA issue. There was an issue on critical vulnerabilities exploited by Russian SRV. Okay, well, let's see what they're talking about. Oh, there's some Fortinet, some Pulse Secure, VMware, and if I open this up and open another tab, we can see how many I have. I have 3. And they're all related to NetScaler, it looks like, I think, in this particular case, that I need to go now and check and make sure that we're okay. So this is an area that I could quickly see. Now, what's nice about this, these are the assets that you're seeing. This is what's made up your attack surface. It's not curated, so this is what we found by looking at your domains and other different things and IPs and linking it all together, but it's downloadable. I can download this, and every day it updates, okay? So if something new comes online, you're gonna have it there, okay? We also look at the web technologies, the web frameworks, how you are in the cloud, where your assets are, and there's a lot of this in Azure. and AWS, okay? And then I can look through and see there was one vulnerability. Oh, I have one box that has SSH open. I can look at to see what type of vulnerabilities I have. So this gives me the ability to see myself. But if you're an Illuminate customer, you can also buy third-party attack surfaces. And if you do that, let me show you an attack surface that is a hosting provider. And if you're a hosting provider, you're hosting a lot of stuff, and some of the stuff might be bad, or people might attack from your attack surface. So let me bring up one real quick. Here we look. Let's look at this one. So this is a hosting provider, but if I scroll down here, you can notice that these are all of the articles that hit that said there's something in my attack surface that I need to look at. So there was a direct correlation between something that was published, whether something was malicious or vulnerability, and then what I have, okay? And if we go down to the very bottom, there's that reputation area where I can see that this particular hosting provider, there's 135,000 credential harvestings that happen. There's DDoS, there's remote access exploits, scanners, command and control, abuse. So if I look at like the command and control servers, I can look at that and see what type, where are these? A lot of these, oh, they're in China, okay? So these are like nation state type of things that you might see. And then looking at inside of here, we can also look at like the tooling and say, hey, I want to look at like Cobalt Strike and see which threat groups are using those and the indicators that are out there. Now, when we look at these indicators, you know, there's been 2,400 published indicators about Cobalt Strike, but RiskIQ has 8,000 more. So if I wanted to protect myself, I can take a list of all of these Cobalt Strike servers and say, go to my firewall. I want to block all of these domains, all of these IPs from communicating to me. So as this gets updated every day, I can run a script, or I can come and download and take that and inoculate myself from this tool. And if I inoculate myself from this tool, then, you know, Helix Kitten or Raikou or Axiom or the Dukes or all these different threat actors that are utilizing these tools can attack me. So that's what we have. Now that we have this data and we're giving you these different lenses and pivot points to see it, you can help your organization be more proactive and stop these threats before they happen.
Yep. And folks, I know we are coming up on the top of the hour. We are very grateful for everyone attending today's first kickoff of the summer camp series of our cyber threat workshops. We don't want to leave the day without inviting you to keep going, to go ahead and you can convert over the promo that you have now into the full trial. You can then see your own attack surface instead of just one assigned to you, and really start to utilize a lot of the principles that you learned today in your own environment, and see where those entanglements are between your infrastructure, your digital footprint, and the threat actors out there and their nefarious digital footprints, and where those things are interacting, and get ahead of these things and have that, again, elastic defense against them and preemptively for your own attack surface and digital footprint as it grows and evolves. So you can go to RiskIQ, community.riskiq.com/learn-more/Illuminate, and that'll take you to the microsite page where you can check out all the different components and the different ways that they work. There's little videos and everything written in there as well, and you can activate the trial from there. It'll spin up your own personal attack surface, and again, I would invite you to get your colleagues in there as well. You all can participate in this grand experiment of your own attack surface relative to the threats that are out there. And so when you activate that trial, you'll then get that access. It goes for 30 days, and you can continue what we've learned today. Also with the promo that you do have, it won't be your own attack surface, but you'll have that for an additional 7 days. And then if you go in and activate the trial, you have an additional 30 tacked onto that. But Benjamin, are there any...
Yeah, there's some questions came in. So somebody asked, okay, once you see a phishing attack, what can you do? So you can go out to Google and Microsoft and tell them, hey, this is a bad URL that's associated with phishing, and get it blocked. So you can block it. Now, one of the things is that RiskIQ also has brand protection, external threats, where we monitor your own domains all the time, and then we send you the pictures with everything, and then we can either do the full takedown and all that stuff, or you can mark it as, this is malicious, or this is not mine, this is bad. And then Microsoft and Google take our block list and put it in production within 5 minutes of us notifying them. So whenever that gets done, immediately 95% of the world's browsers won't go to it. They'll get the big red, don't go there, this is bad. But it's still online. So then there's a process that you can go through that takes 1 to 4 days to notify those ISPs and hosting providers to say, here's the evidence, this is bad, take it down. RiskIQ has those services that can help you do those as well. But those are the type of things that we have available to not only immediately block it, so then most people can't get there, but then to physically take it down so it doesn't just pop up again someplace else.
Yeah, another good question here. Let's clarify for everyone on cloning certificates and being able to hide your true identity from legitimate or illegitimate. You want to talk a little bit about how we track that and can?
So when you look at who is information, like generally they want a telephone number, they want something when you do it, and the company that they buy it through really has that information, but it's redacted where you can't see, you can't link it together. And some of that data is not ever checked. So for example, I want to bring up something real quick just to show you. I want to go back to the interface and show you a search. So let me just bring something up. I just want to get into this advanced search. So if you take a look at this pull down, once you're in the advanced search, I can come through and go like who is, and I can say, I want to look for who is name. Okay. Look at this. If I came in here and typed Batman, all of these domains were registered by Batman. Does Batman really exist? So if I come in here and I say, okay, let me look at this one. Here's an old domain. Let's see, not this one, not this one. It was this one. We look at the who is data. I can go back and say, oh, look, it's Batman. There's Batman, there's Superman, there's so some of these registrars aren't doing their job. They don't care. They know that people are going to do bad stuff with it. And that's why they might be around. They're not policing themselves. So now with it being redacted, it's like all of it is like this. It's kind of like, it's not something that you can really use in your investigations all the time. It's not fruitful like it used to be. The certificates have a lot of this type of information that gives you the capability of pivoting. It's an advanced data set, but we give it to everybody because who is basically dried up. And if you're using a tool that is based upon who is data, and there's no good source of who is data anymore, that it's not going to really help you in your organization, in your investigations. You need to have these other data sets, and that's why we do these workshops, to give you access and show you these data sets that can really prevent you from hitting the brick wall. We show you that there's really a path and there's other things out there to link that infrastructure together.
Yeah. I think Jeff was able to answer the question around certificates, and we are coming up at time, folks, and we do want to thank you again for being with us, taking a couple hours out of your day and out of your summer to join the Cyber Threat Workshop Summer Camp. Come on back. We're going to do our next one on the 24th, and then every couple of weeks for the remainder of the summer. We look forward to seeing you at a future one. And again, get out there, start the trial, and keep things going. These things are easy to find. They're easy to stand up. They're easy to attack. But what we're trying to do here is make the work of cyber threat intelligence leaders and cyber threat analysts just as easy to find, unmask, and defeat the adversary. But Benjamin, any final parting thoughts?
Yeah, if in this promo code give it out to your friends and family. Anybody can use it. We're doing this because we want to teach you how to fish. We want you to be able to go out there and find these bad guys. Every single one of these workshops we do, it's different examples. It's not the same stuff. And we're trying to show you things that we're seeing in the wild. So then when you experience, it's not new to you, okay? Because if you've seen it before, you're more likely to spot it, know it's bad, and be able to take it down right away. It's not going to delay your investigation. And that's why we do these things.
Thanks again for being here today, folks. We'll get the recordings out and the materials out to everyone as well, and get out there and defeat adversaries.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.